but also a sign that a message of some kind might be needed. Anne McMillan is a former CBC bureau chief in London, and she joins us from her home in the British capital. So nice to see you, Anne.
Nice to see you.
Let's talk about how extraordinarily rare this is. I would have thought that it was more common, but in fact, the Queen has not done this very often.
No, she hasn't. This is only the third time, Rosemary, in her entire reign of 68 years that she's spoken at a time of crisis. The first one was during the Gulf War in 1991. She also, which we'll all remember, talked at after Princess Diana died. Public opinion was pretty anti-family at that point, and she spoke from Buckingham Palace then. And she also spoke to the public after her mother's death, about 4 years later. So this is quite something.
She speaks, I know, in a sort of a Christmas address annually, but otherwise, yeah, doesn't speak really about current events or things that might be unfolding in the world. How would a message from the Queen be regarded?
Well, I think that the government, so there's an interesting headline in the Sunday Times today saying that number 10 plays its trump card, the Queen, because as you may know, Britain is going into its third week of really serious lockdown. We've been told not to leave our homes except to buy groceries, go to the drugstore, and take one daily exercise walking distance from our homes. Only once a day we're supposed to go out. Well, today the temperature in London was 22 degrees. People were flocking to parks. In fact, Britain's health minister a couple of hours ago said that a small minority of people are risking lives, their lives and others' lives. And he said that unless people started behaving responsibly, they're even talking about stopping people going out to exercise. So I think Downing Street, which is the Prime Minister's home, and the government feels that this is the time that the Queen, who is above reproach, I mean, she's going to be 94 in a couple of weeks. She's holed up at Windsor Castle with her 98-year-old husband, Prince Philip, and people respect her. They admire her. She's seen as a unifying force in this nation. And you've mentioned a couple of the things that she's going to say, and they're basically saying to people, as you say, stay calm and keep calm and carry on.
And I should say, Anne, because you've alluded to it, the situation in the United Kingdom is not a good one. It is quite dire. Just so people remember, there's about 67 million people in the UK. The number of deaths on Sunday is now headed towards 5,000. So that is a very high number, and it is troubling for many people. And it is, of course, because for a period of time, it didn't seem like the United Kingdom was taking the same approach as other countries to lock down and practice physical distancing. They've been working hard to catch up. But I think it's fair to say, Anne, that there's been some pressure on the government. Boris Johnson himself has COVID-19 and is self-isolating. But there's been some pressure on the government to act much stronger and to tell the public to do that too.
That's right. And they're still hoping that, with making people stay at home most of the time, that they'll be able to flatten out this curve. And so that the National Health Service here, our public health service, can be prepared for the big crunch, which is expected to come at the end of next week or the week after, with most numbers of cases. At the moment, there are 48,000 cases of coronavirus identified. I mean, and people expect that's really much wider with people who are asymptomatic and haven't yet been tested for the disease.
Okay, Anne McMillan in her home there in London. She's going to stick with us through our coverage here. Thanks, Anne. Let me go now, though, to Roya Nika. She's the royal correspondent for the Sunday Times, and she also joins us from London. So we have been hearing that the Queen was going to make an address for a while. I guess she and Downing Street decided this was the right time. Why do you think that it is the right moment, Roya?
Well, I think it's the right moment for exactly the reason Anne said, and that headline she mentioned is a headline for the piece that I wrote about Downing Street playing their trump card. I mean, let's not forget that, I've been briefed by the palace that the Queen herself very much wrote this speech. This was not a speech or a national address that's been written for her by Downing Street. But that said, the Queen has been in very close touch with the Prime Minister and the government over the last few weeks. She wanted to hear, she's been getting briefings, science and medical briefings to understand the situation as clearly as possible. And I think the government's view, and I think probably the Queen's view, is that the next week that we're going into is an absolutely critical time. We've had 2 weeks of lockdown here in the UK. As Anne said, the weather is warming up. People are getting listless. It's getting harder and harder to stay indoors. And the rarity of the Queen's addresses, there have only been 3 before like this in a 68-year reign, mean that the impact is enormous. And so, yes, we're getting daily briefings from the government every day here, but the Queen making a national address like this will have an impact that will go far beyond that. And I think that is important for the public, and it was important for the government to feel that they were able to do that.
And we don't expect, Roya, the Queen to sort of preach public health advice. That is not the goal of this message. What is the goal then?
No, the public health advice comes every day from the government and from Public Health England. I think the goal of this, there are a few key goals. Reassurance. I think she wants, the nation to feel that we know we're all in this together, but that we will get through it. And also encouragement that people are doing the right thing by following, government advice. She's not going to spell that out, but the Queen doesn't need to. In the little snippets that the palace have already released to us, that spirit that she's getting across is, in the future, will you be able to look your children and grandchildren in the eye and say that you did your bit? And that's what she's going to be talking about. And also deeply personal, we've been told, of this message. We know that she's going to reflect on her own experience of very difficult times, like the Second World War, which of course she and her parents lived through. And I think the other goal of this address is, this is a woman who is going to be 94 soon. Mm-hmm. She has really seen it all. She has a life experience of history that very few of us have. I think the hope is that people, young and old, will be able to draw on that tonight.
I wonder too, you mentioned her age, about to be 94.
I'm speaking to you at what I know is an increasingly challenging time, a time of disruption in the life of our country, a disruption that has brought grief to some, financial difficulties to many, and enormous changes to the daily lives of us all. I want to thank everyone on the NHS frontline, as well as care workers and those carrying out essential roles, who selflessly continue their day-to-day duties outside the home in support of us all. I'm sure the nation will join me in assuring you that what you do is appreciated, and every hour of your hard work brings us closer to a return to more normal times. I also want to thank those of you who are staying at home, thereby helping to protect the vulnerable and sparing many families the pain already felt by those who have lost loved ones. Together we are tackling this disease, and I want to reassure you that if we remain united and resolute, then we will overcome it. I hope in the years to come, everyone will be able to take pride in how they responded to this challenge. And those who come after us will say the Britons of this generation were as strong as any, that the attributes of self-discipline, of quiet, good-humoured resolve, and of fellow feeling still characterize this country. The pride in who we are is not a part of our past. It defines our present and our future. The moments when the United Kingdom has come together to applaud its care and essential workers will be remembered as an expression of our national spirit, and its symbol will be the rainbows drawn by children. Across the Commonwealth and around the world, we have seen heartwarming stories of people coming together to help others, be it through delivering food parcels and medicines, checking on neighbours, or converting businesses to help the relief effort. And though self-isolating may at times be hard, many people of all faiths and of none are discovering that it presents an opportunity to slow down, pause and reflect in prayer or meditation. It reminds me of the very first broadcast I made in 1940, helped by my sister. We, as children, spoke from here at Windsor to children who had been evacuated from their homes and sent away for their own safety. Today, once again, many will feel a painful sense of separation from their loved ones. But now, as then, we know deep down that it is the right thing to do. While we have faced challenges before, this one is different. This time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavor, using the great advances of science and our instinctive compassion to heal. We will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us. We should take comfort that while we may have more still to endure, better days will return. We will be with our friends again. We will be with our families again. We will meet again. But for now, I send my thanks and warmest good wishes to you all.